because the work we started during this campaign doesn't end tonight. In fact, it's just beginning.
Well, that was Bill Thompson a little more than 4 years ago, already looking forward as he conceded the mayor's race to Michael Bloomberg then. Thompson lost that race by only 4 points despite being outspent by the mayor by at least 10 to 1, right? Well, Thompson was an underdog in 2009, and he may be an underdog in 2012. Latest Q poll out has the city comptroller trailing Christine Quinn by 26 points in the Democratic primary and running third in that same poll behind Bill de Blasio. And as we said, we are joined by Mr. Thompson himself. When you look at those numbers here, what do you say?
I say that I remember poll numbers that were out with a week to go that had me down by 15 points and growing. I remember pollsters who were sitting there talking about it's going to be a blowout. Meanwhile, we were looking at something entirely different. And the people.
Did you honestly know it was going to be as close as it was in election night?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we put our pollster on the phone a week out to try and let the media understand this was an election that was based on turnout and that people should come out and vote. It was between a week out. It was somewhere between 3 and 6 points. And you tried to make people aware of that. You tried to make the press aware of that. So I ran all along, not to make a statement. I ran to win that election and also to try and take the city in a different direction.
Andrew, remember how much 4 years ago we were freaking out by how close the thing was and nobody saw the thing coming? All right. To that end, I want to get into one of the biggest issues. We've been covering it. Dominic has been down in lower New York at the courthouse over the issue of stop and frisk. And there was a panel that you sat on recently where the issue was brought up again. One of the challengers in the primary, Mr. Liu, he had a direct challenge for you. Let's play the clip for everybody.
I'm the one who has to worry about my son being stopped and frisked. I'm the one who has to worry about my son being shot in the street of New York. I'm the one who has to worry because when I grew up, it was a very different situation. I'm concerned about my son also being shot by somebody who's a member of a gang in the streets. I'm worried about my son being mugged in the street of New York City. And at the same point, I don't have to sacrifice his constitutional rights to make sure he is safe.
Tell us how you really feel. But to that end, that came after John Liu challenged you to eliminate the policy altogether of stop and frisk. And after you saw the 5 millionth stop, right, Dominic? You said, I want to change it, but I don't want to get rid of it entirely. Why keep it around at all?
Because you don't want to take away useful policing tools. What we've seen in the city of New York, where you had 2 years ago, 700,000 young men, most of them black and Hispanic, who were stopped, and they were innocent. Last year, 550,000. It's a useful policing tool. It is being misused and abused by Mike Bloomberg and by Commissioner Ray Kelly. So you don't want to remove something entirely. You want it used the way it was supposed to be used. And I said that all along. I don't want to eliminate stop.
But here's the question, and Dominic, you guys jump in. I still haven't heard anybody explain if there's so much discretion in the policy, how it doesn't inevitably lead to abuse. Let's say even they get rid of the quota program. You're still going to have one cop that's going to use it the way that it was intended. You're going to have another cop that's not going to, and then you're going to have the problems that we see right now. How can you have it both ways?
Sure. But now we're back into training. You're back into correct oversight. You're back into taking those performance goals off the table. So there shouldn't be those goals that are attached to stop and frisk. In 2002, you had about 100,000 stop and frisks, and it wasn't a major problem. It was being used correctly. Police officers will tell you right now, you've taken away, as one officer phrased it, I must admit it was very eloquently done. He phrased it as, you're taking away the art of being a police officer. You're taking my discretion away. So with training and proper oversight by a police commissioner and a mayor, that should be enough to make sure that things are done correctly, that when a police officer has a legitimate concern that there may be someone with a gun, he can stop that person based with the guidelines that are there. Right now, that's not what's occurring.
If stop and frisk continues under Mayor Thompson and the numbers still come back 88% of the stops were black and Hispanic, is that a problem? Are the numbers in and of themselves problematic, or is it case-by-case basis?
See, it becomes a case-by-case. What you don't want to do is What's the acceptable number? There are no acceptable numbers because each situation is different. And so you don't want to say, what's the proper number of stop and frisks? There isn't. Who should be stopped? You don't want to say don't stop or do stop. It's based on discretion, and the officer has to be able to justify. This is why I stopped this person, not because I stopped every black young man or every Hispanic young man, based on the guidelines that are established.
Yeah, but if the yield is disproportionately low, it suggests that the discretion is being widely misapplied and misused. Although we've discussed it on this program before. You can, and as a criminal defense lawyer, I don't believe in handcuffing or straitjacketing police officers. They need discretion to make on-the-spot, spur-of-the-moment decisions. The Supreme Court has said that over and over again in its Fourth Amendment decisions. But there is a systemic problem with the training and the way the discretion is being exercised, and Judge Schindler is going to figure it out in the case that you're undoubtedly watching on Pearl Street.
You know, you heard in parts of this case, you've heard indications that, and you've had officers testify, as well as a tape recording, and it indicates, you know, go out and stop black young men, go out and do this. That's what you don't want to have. It's a question of what are you looking for and making sure that those guidelines are in place and people are held accountable. That's what you need to do.
I want to get to a few more things if I could here, guys. And the issue that's dominated seemingly the past year, with the exception of stop and frisk, has this current mayor gone too far with maybe even noble causes? I'm not talking about guns, we'll talk about that later, but in terms of looking out, let's say, to supporters' arguments for the best interests of New Yorkers, and opponents would call it the nanny state. If we, the thrust of it, he says that it is his job. It's my job to look out for the best interest of New Yorkers. If you had his job, would it be your job to say, hey, you know what, sugar intake is really high for kids, I'm going to try and cut down on sodas, or I want trans fats on menus, or whatever? Is that your job description?
You know, some of it is and some of it isn't. If you look at providing, you look at the calorie counts. There are calories up in a number of places, and to be honest about it, I've modified the way I eat at certain points where you're going, well, wow, that's 500 calories.
But are you willing to give Bloomberg credit for that?
Absolutely.
That he pushed that when the calories are on
give
the
him
menus
credit
and
on
so
that,
on?
credit on the smoking ban, because it's not a question of you smoking and hurting yourself at that point. It's the effect it has on other people. Give him credit on that. Trans fats, I'll give him credit.
Where's he gone too far?
Oh, if you look at the soda ban, I mean, look, if the objective is to reduce obesity, there are a dozen different ways, if you were serious about it. Education and nutrition education. Why aren't we bringing that into the schools? Why are we not bringing physical education back into the school system? If that's a concern, then we should start to do that, as opposed to trying to create and put this Band-Aid on things and say, we're really dealing with something. If you want to reduce, you know, if you're concerned about sugar intake, then rather than banning sodas of over 16 ounces, why aren't you pushing the companies, and there are a number of ways that you can do that, to reduce the amount of sugar in soda also?
Why don't the same concern apply about trans fats? Isn't that similar in that it's restricting people's ability to make the decision for themselves?
I'll tell you what, in that instance, that is less about, and we've seen the effects of trans fats in a number of different ways, and that was replaceable. In this case, you're telling me I can have this amount, but not that amount. It starts to become, and the contradictions in itself are a little ridiculous. So I think that, you know, I think that is way too far. I've opposed that from the beginning. I thought that was a mistake.